So builders, welcome, Pranav here. Today we are focusing on the seller side of web payments. Ever wanted to easily monetize your API on a pay-per-use basis? The X402 protocol, an open standard for frictionless HTTP native web-based payments, is here to help. In this video, we are building an X402 protected API service from scratch using Node.js, Express.js, and the official X402 Express SDK. We will show you how to configure an API that requires a small USDC payment on Base Sepolia testnet. We'll also touch upon how you could configure different payments for other EIP 3009 compliant tokens as well. This video is for you if you are an API developer or service provider looking to integrate crypto payments directly into your web services. We will cover setting up a Node.js and TypeScript project, configuring the server environment variables, setting up an X402 protected API with a focus on USDC payments, and an example of other tokens as well, and using this X402 protected API directly in our browser. Ready to set up native Web3 based payments for your API? Let's get started. So first of all, let's get started with the project environment setup. So I'm already on my terminal over here. So first, let's set up our project directory in KDI X402 Selo semi setup, and let's navigate over to Go. After that, we will initialize a Node.js project and then Ashwa. So we have set up the Node.js project as well. Now let's install the various dependencies required for this project. So first, let's install the normal dependencies. So first of all, we'll install Express for the server setup. Then we install the X402 Express, the official library for setting up X402 based services in our API service, and .env for managing environment variables. So let's install this. Once that is done, we'll install the dev dependencies like TypeScript and the TypeScript setup. So let's move ahead and install the dev dependencies as well. So first of all, we have the TypeScript, then we have the TS node for running the TypeScript files, and then we have types express and types node for the various type configuration for Node and Express. So let's install this as well. So once that is done, we can do the TypeScript configuration, and then we can move on to the actual logic and configuration of server environment. So let's do a normal npm POC net. So we are done with the setup. Now let's open up this in any code editor. I'm using Cursor. You can use any code editor that you like. So yep. Now we can move on to the actual configuration of server environment variables and the logic of the export to created API. Now let's continue with our API service setup. So first of all, let's create a folder, src folder. Then let's create the main project file. So this should be x402 server ps. Then we create an environment variable file by all of our server configuration variables on this side. I already have the variables over here. Let's go through it one by one and see how it works. So first of all, we have the server port. This is the network port where the API service is configured. Next, we have the Base Sepolia address where payments should be sent. So this is the server page to address where all of the X402 based payments are sent. So just set up this address with the address where you want all of the X402 payments to be received. So I have setting up with one of my test addresses. Next, we have the URL of the X402 facilitator service. This is the very important environment variable. So basically, this is the service which would make sure that the bridge between the X402 enabled server and the blockchain is correctly set up. So this is basically the bridge between the server and the blockchain. So the facilitator makes sure that all of the payments are verified on X402. So here we are using the testnet X402 facilitator. X402 also has a base mainnet facilitator which you can access through the docs. You can just install the Coinbase X402 package for the mainnet facilitator. So once that is done, we are done with the server environment setup, and now we can move on to the main logic of the API service. Now let's build an API service using Express and the X402 Express package. So we'll be setting up APIs that would be covered by the X402 middleware for payment and other related configurations. So first of all, we'll start with the imports and the environment variable setup. So I already have the code over here. So first of all, we import the .env for environment variable setup. Then we have Express for server setup and X402 Express's payment middleware setup for setting up the middleware for Express.js server. Next, we load the environment variables from env file using .env.config. Then we set up the various environment variables. So first of all, we have the port, and we have pay to address and the facilitator URL. And next, we'll set up a normal if check to make sure that all of the environment variables are set up. And if they are not set up, it will show a console error showing missing required environment variables. So once that is done, now we can move to the Express server setup and set up the x402 middleware and the APIs. Now let's set up our Express server and the x402 middleware. So first of all, let's set up our server const is equals to Express. And then let's set up our x402 middleware using app.use. So already have the code over here. So this is very simple configuration. You can understand all of this by just going to the configuration setup and seeing how all of this works. So first of all, we use the app.use middleware, and then we use the payment middleware or import from the x402 Express to set up the x402 payment configurations. So first of all, we set up the pay to address. So the default address where the payment should be saying, we have already set this up in our environment variable, so we'll be using that. Then next, we set up the x402 service for our API. So we'll be creating a normal placeholder API for this. So we'll be using /API/weather update. So we'll be shortly creating this placeholder API as well. After that, the first option is that we can set up a simple USDC payment for this. So what we do is that we set up the configuration such as price. So you can just set up the price in dollars here. So if you set up the price in dollars, it will be requesting the amount in USDC. So we can set it up. So I have set it up as $0.01. And next we set up the network on where we want this transactions to be happening. So I have went with Base Sepolia network as our facilitator is also on Base Sepolia. So once that is done, we are done with the main configuration of x402 middleware. Next, we set up the x402 middleware with the facilitator URL. So we have already set up the facilitator URL with the Base Sepolia facilitator URL, and we can just add it over to x402 payment middleware configurations. Once that is done, we are done with the middleware configuration for this API. Now this API would successfully request for a payment whenever anyone wants to access this API. So now we have seen how we can configure x402 for simple USDC payments, but we can also configure x402 with any EIB 3009 compatible token. So let's go through that implementation and see what are the different parameters it takes for other tokens. We'll be commenting out this implementation as we will keep this demo simple and we'll test out the USDC payment. So I already have the implementation over here. So let's go to the implementation and see how it works for other tokens. So first of all, we define the APIs and we define the API. So we have the get/API over here. After that, we define the various objects that are needed for other tokens. So first of all, we define the price with the amount and the asset. In the asset object, we define the address. So here you can add the contract address for the token. After that, we define the decimals, and after that, we define the EIP712 object where we add the parameters like name and version for this token. So once we are done with the token configurations, we can set this up for the network Base Sepolia or any network that you like. So that's it for any other EIP 3009 compatible tokens. You need to set it up with these parameters to make sure that the x402 configuration is properly set up. So now we are done with the main x402 middleware setup. Now let's finish up our server implementation by defining the APIs. So we aren't actually defining the APIs with all the weather endpoints. We'll be just using a placeholder or a default data over here. So, but our main goal over here is to understand how we can actually implement x402 across any APIs that we want. So the handler wouldn't be anything special. We'll just be console logging and sending a default response. So just a normal report like location, weather, and temperature for this weather update endpoint. And here for the other handler, we'll be using like a premium recipe endpoint or something in that, where we send a default recipe for all the requests. So once that is done, let's finish up our server implementation with the port setup. Now let's finish the server port setup as well. So we use a normal app.listen with the console log. So it will show us where the server is, on which port is it listening, with the API weather endpoint and with the facilitator. So we are done with the server implementation. Now let's test the server implementation out and see if the x402 middleware works or not. Now we need to test out our implementation by seeing if the server with the x402 middleware is working or not. So let's start up a server. So I'll just run the npm run start state. I've already set up the scripts. Okay, the server is running as well. Now let's run the endpoint and see if it works or not. And boom, that's it. We were able to set up an x402 configuration with just few lines of setup. And as you can see, the configuration was successful as well. And it's showing a payment required message with to access this content, please pay 0.01 Base Sepolia USDC. You can connect your wallet over here and access the API endpoint for here. But for more production scenarios, you will need to set up a client with the x402 packages to make sure that you are correctly setting up the x402 configurations and accessing this endpoint. In the next video, we'll cover up how to set up this client and access this endpoint as well. For now, let's try accessing the x402 API from this pre-configured UI. So first of all, I'll connect my wallet. So I'll be using MetaMask. Let's connect our wallet. So it will show us the various parameters like the wallet, the amount, and the network. Once that is done, we'll click on Pay Now button. So here it will show us the message with the primary type transfer with authorization. So this type of transactions are only supported by EIP 3009 tokens. So that's why we were stressing on the EIP 3009 tokens points before. So we need to make sure that whatever tokens that we are using for x402 API implementation, those support EIP 3009. So I'll just click confirm over here. And that's it. Our implementation was successful, and here we can see the data as well. So we were able to pay for this data with a small amount of Base Sepolia USDC, and now we can access the data using this API. You are now equipped to set up your own export to provided APIs. This is a foundational step towards monetizing your digital services directly on chain. What's next in your export journey? Experiment. Try uncommenting the EIP 3009 token example in the code. Configure it with the EIP 3009 supported token and Base Sepolia to see how you can configure various modes of tokens as a payment. Second, consider mainnet. Think about the security, various operational aspects, and the pricing models if you were to deploy a similar service on mainnet. Explore further. To dive deeper into x402 and related technologies, go to the official Coinbase x402 GitHub repository to see how the post specifications work, how the SDK is configured, and you can also find out more advanced examples to dive deeper into x402 protocol. You can also check out the Coinbase Developer Platform documentation. While today we were focused on x402 server, Coinbase Developer Platform offers powerful tools like Wallet as a Service to build powerful backend applications as well as sophisticated client applications. You can also check out the highlight stream for more such resources on Coinbase Developer Platform tools. In our next video, we'll switch gears and build a client that can programmatically pay export to provided APIs, including the live production ones using CDP wallets. If this guide on setting up your export to provided API was helpful, please give it a like and follow for more such Web3 content and share it with other developers as well. What kind of services would you protect with x402? Let me know your ideas and also your questions in the comments below. Thanks for building with me today. See you in the next one.